arrival, this city was drowning under attack. Have you ever considered that all this is your fault?
And I'm afraid that when I walk through those asylum gates, when I walk into Arkham and the doors close behind me, it'll be just like coming home.
Much has been made of Batman's madness in the last few decades. It is fairly well accepted now that this hero, for all of his many merits, is not a well man. But that has not always been the prevailing opinion on the character. From our modern perspective, one would think that someone who dresses as a bat to stop crime as a result of a tragic and traumatic loss in his youth would have always been labelled mad. And while there have been stories that have delved into questions of guilt, his duality with his villains, and even paranoia and instability, what was the first comic to tackle Batman's inner psyche and potential madness? It wasn't Ego. It was the work that inspired so much of how Batman would go on to be explored, and how he would be perceived in the public consciousness. It was 1989's A Serious House on Serious Earth.
You're doing what any sane man in your appalling circumstances would do. You're going mad.
While every villain to some extent is a representative of Batman's madness, in this comic the Joker takes on more of a guide or a tempter. These two have always been opposites: order versus chaos, darkness versus light, the use of humour for cruelty versus the use of fear for good. Inside Arkham, the boundary between the two collapses. The Joker's laughter, his theatrical violence, his disregard for logic or identity, all serve as provocation for Batman to let go of his sanity and exist in a place they both suspect he truly belongs. But more than that, Joker exposes the madness inherent in Batman's control. Morrison's Joker operates on a level of pure instinct, what the Arkham psychiatrist calls a sort of super sanity, a constant reinvention of the self in response to chaos. The unsettling truth of A Serious House on Serious Earth is that Batman's order may be no less deranged than Joker's chaos. The Joker accepts his insanity and lives freely within it. For all his discipline, Batman's life is defined by obsession, ritual, and compulsion, behaviours that are themselves attempts to control instability. His vow to never kill, his endless repetition of the same war, his monastic existence. These are not signs of stability, but of someone trapped in a cycle of self-imposed torment. This comic is here to answer the question of whether or not Batman should in fact be in here with his villains, which is why the comic goes on to show them all as reflections of him.
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. You may have noticed that I'm not all there myself.
When Batman meets Jervis Tetch, the Mad Hatter, we are confronted with Batman's inability to move on from childhood, to move beyond that scared boy in the alley who saw his parents gunned down, the boy who created a fantasy to fight the monsters, scare the criminals, and is still living in it today. Tetch's fixation on Alice in Wonderland masks something darker, the desire to retreat into fantasy, to escape the unbearable real world. For Batman, this encounter strikes close to home. His entire crusade is itself a fairy tale, a story he told himself as a child, that monsters could be fought and evil could be contained. Text shows us what happens when that escape becomes pathology. Both men live in stories they can't leave. The obsession with Wonderland is less a quirk and more of an attachment to childhood and its wonder. For Batman, his attachment is to the mere happiness of having both his parents and not being exposed to the danger and injustice of the world. For the Mad Hatter, it is twisted and sinister. It is wanting to corrupt and consume the innocence of childhood.
Let the law handle it. Here's the only law. The law of averages. They couldn't fix me. Nothing can change what I am. You and me both.
Madness isn't the loss of reality. It is a confrontation with the truer one. Sanity, by contrast, is the delusion that order, meaning, and a cure are possible. If the Mad Hatter represents Batman's inability to leave childhood behind, then Two-Face reveals his inability to surrender control. Harvey Dent represents Batman's struggle with order, the desperate need to make sense of the chaos. Once Gotham's White Knight, Dent's mind has fractured into a binary of good and evil, chance and choice. In the asylum, his coin is replaced first by dice, then tarot cards, leaving him paralyzed by endless possibilities. The man who once sought control now cannot go to the bathroom without divine permission. Both men once believed in order, one in the law, the other in justice. Yet both saw how fragile those structures are when tested by tragedy. Two-Face, as a side of Harvey, sought to impose an order on the world through a rejection of justice. Batman, as a side of Bruce Wayne, chose to go against the law to obtain the justice that Harvey walked away from. Two-Face's scarred visage is a cruel emblem of Batman's own split self, the man and the mask, Bruce and the Bat. Batman's identity is, like Harvey's, a mask worn to protect the fragile self beneath. But while Harvey's mask is torn apart, Batman's is carved into his very skin. Both men are slaves to their own systems, terrified of what freedom might look like.
How does it feel, Wayne, to stand on the very stones that ran with your parents' blood? Do you feel sad, full of rage? Or does that outfit help bury your feelings, hiding your true self? Oh, you are a truly extraordinary specimen. I look forward to breaking you.
If Arkham Asylum is a mirror for Batman's fractured psyche, then the Scarecrow represents the part of him that has weaponized fear. Both men understand terror as the most primal of human emotions, an ancient instinct that governs behavior more powerfully than reason or morality. Yet while Dr. Jonathan Crane studies fear to master it, Batman wields it, almost ritualistically, as the foundation for his crusade. In both cases, fear is not something to be conquered, but to be controlled and directed towards a purpose. However, Crane has weaponized fear against others to guard against his own weakness derived from years of abuse and bullying. Bruce uses it to warn the criminal element and protect the innocent. However, from another lens, that might not be entirely the case. Their motives may not actually be all that different. He was scared in that alleyway. He must have felt so weak and helpless to see not only his greatest loved ones, but his two protectors gunned down in front of him. So he took that fear and turned it on those that made him feel that way, the criminal element. In this sense, Scarecrow is not Batman's opposite, but his echo. Where Crane's obsession with fear has consumed him entirely, transforming him into the very embodiment of terror, Batman dances on the edge of that same abyss, convinced that his use of fear is noble rather than pathological. But the line between justice and sadism blurs inside Arkham's walls. Scarecrow's presence reminds us that Batman's mastery of fear may not be an act of sanity, but an extension of madness, a coping mechanism for a trauma he's never truly overcome. In both men, fear becomes not just a weapon, but an identity.
Your presence creates these animals. You created the environment that allowed the germ to mutate, to become stronger. Look at the Joker. Would he even exist if not for you?
Running parallel to Batman's journey in this comic is the diary of Amdus Arkham, the man who built the asylum. In the life of this troubled man, we see a mirror of how Batman's noble intentions curdle into obsession. He wanted to cure madness, but instead became consumed by it. He built the halls for healing madness, but it only became a place to contain it. Batman wants to dispense justice, but all it seems he can do is put the criminals away until they inevitably spill out again, like placing a bandage over a burst pipe. Arkham's story mirrors Bruce Wayne's origins, both men reacting to trauma by seeking order. The loss of one's parents, driving them to see that what happened to them doesn't happen to others. Madness is a sort of death and new life. By going mad, you leave this world behind and are reborn in another. Perhaps you're even leaving hell to enter paradise. Amdus Arkham's breaking point comes with Mad Dog, the man who murdered his wife and child. Arkham's attempts to cure him is a performance of sanity, of rational order and medical control. Yet when he kills him mid-treatment, it's not madness that grips him, but a terrible clarity. In that instant, he abandons the fantasy that such evil could ever be purified by reason or science. The madness was the belief that the world could be made whole. The sanity was the acceptance that it cannot. Morrison twists the traditional moral binary until it folds in on itself. Arkham's act of murder, the one moment when he sees reality unmasked, is also the act that damns him. Like Batman, he builds his prison from the ruins of his revelation, enclosing his sanity behind iron bars so the rest of the world may go on pretending it's sane. In this way, Arkham becomes a prototype for Batman, a man who suffers a trauma so immense that he must create a system, a mask, an asylum to contain it.
For though I've no idea what this accoutred frowsty barn is worth, it pleases me to stand in silence here. A serious house, on serious earth it is, in whose blent air all our compulsions meet, are recognized and robed as destinies.
By the time dawn touches the walls of Arkham, Batman has walked through every shadow of his own mind. The child's fantasy, the tyrant's order, the weaponized fear, the dissolving self. He leaves the asylum, but we are uncertain whether he has escaped or merely shut the door on his own reflection. In Morrison's vision, Batman's madness is not a flaw to be cured, but a fact to be endured. Arkham Asylum is not a story of redemption, it's a confession, a serious house on serious earth, where every villain is a shard of the same broken mirror. Let's go back to what we said about Harvey. The comic ego rejects the idea that Batman is Bruce's true self, allowed to be given life by the freedom of the mask. This comic, with its meditations on madness being a sort of freedom, of madness being an unlocking of one's true self, then perhaps the Bat is the real man. We rarely see Bruce's face in the comic, except when he is screaming at the perpetrator, "I am a man." The man who orchestrated the asylum takeover read over Amadeus's journals and found out that the man and his mother were terrorized by a madness which manifested itself as a bat and wanted to lure Batman into the asylum to slay the monster. Bruce insists he is a man, but as soon as the villain has been defeated, he puts his mask back on and walks back into the den of madmen, telling them to decide if he should stay or go. Perhaps he truly did, as he feared, go home.